This race we finished 37th, and it was hugely off from our 30th place last race. Potentially the one pit stop strategy didn't work as well as we hoped, and we could have lost some time. We qualified at the back of the grid, and we chose the one pit stop because we want to be a bit more risky since we are not competing for points anyways. We know this track is optimum with 2 pit stops based on the past strategy, but our calculator showed that we should do a 1 pit stop. You can see our very slow lap time was the main reason why we finished so poorly in this race, and the gamble didn't really pay off because we finished about 7 places or 3 to 5 places slower than we potentially would have by doing a 2 pit stop, and that going to gain us 500k to $1 million in revenue. The other reason why we potentially didn't do as well is Q1 was a wet and Q2 was dry, and our car setup calculation tool potentially isn't that accurate compared to our rivals. We use a 97% conversion instead of using 1.0, and potentially we could have been quicker if we use the actual full coefficient instead of giving it a bit less. And then the other thing we saw was that our driver didn't make any mistakes and did super well in the race, which he normally makes 2 mistakes per race. When we look at the race results in our own calculator tool, we saw that we had exactly spot on for the car wear, and the tire wear was a bit lower in the race. We trained our driver again to reduce weight, and we updated our car's engine and brakes to have the wear in check. We then did some testing to gain a bit more car performance. And we saw that because with a technical director we have a very high conversion from the test to engineering points, where previously we might have 12 to 15 points. For the car wear, using the online calculator, we copied it into our calculator tool, and like we said, we upgraded the engine and the brakes to keep the wear in check. If we didn't do testing, we could have downgraded the brakes and saved money on one part, but that wouldn't really make sense in terms of revenue we gain from having a faster car. We also recorded the wear in our other calculator tool, and we also recorded the car wear with the higher level parts. And based off the previous wear and the current wear, we were able to calculate the exact amount of laps we can do. And we saw that we were able to do about 90 something laps with the gear. And because we use the Continental tires, it has a very high tire life. That's why we can do nearly 100 stints by doing 2 stints instead of the normal 3 stints with Pirellis. After we upgraded our car, it is still relatively slow and we're still at the back of the grid. We done some car setup to find the setup, and instead of the normal 5 laps to find the setup, we did only 4, and then we entered the optimum setup. And then we changed, instead of using the happy range when we have a technical director. I reverted this to an ordinary happy range with our technical director to make sure we have the actual correct setup. And when we entered the setup without technical director, we were slower than with the technical director one, so it shows that we definitely do need to account for the technical director like we already did in our setup to have the correct one. And our net time was 135, but then we reduced the wingspan a bit to put it a bit closer to the optimum, and our driver did very well in Q1. In Q2 we entered the field and the change in temperature for the setup, and then we qualified again. For the race setup, we increased the rest back to normal because previously we did one pit stop and it increased the car wear. And then we entered the field required for this race. For qualifying, we're still near the back of the grid, but looks a bit better than previous. At the start of the season, we're about 5 or 6 seconds slower than our fastest rival, and now it's less than 5 seconds, which is much better. And we're still relatively slow compared to all of the other managers, but hopefully we will do better this race after the car upgrade. For the race that we're going to do, is normal for overtaking and highly dependent on engine power, and it's good that we done a lot of testing and worn down the engine and upgraded for this race instead of upgrading prematurely, so we're being efficient with our money management. When we look at the past results, this track suits a 3 pit stop and potentially 4 pit stops, and the coefficient 1.6 matches the 3 pit stop, and so I decided to do a 3 pit stop for this race. When I look at the tire wear, the extra soft has a bit more tire left than what we need, so I gave the driver a bit more fuel at the start of the race so he won't lose time during overtaking, and we make sure our driver doesn't do the wrong set of laps on the last stint, because we calculated that with the 2 extra laps, in reality our driver will see 11 laps at the end instead of 13, which we previously thought, and then the average lap is 13, 11 laps is 2 laps less, and it wouldn't make us lose much time because it's still relatively close to the average lap by doing a standard 3 pit stop. And we can see the max wear will be 17% for the start of the race. When I looked at using the soft instead of super soft tires, we were only able to do a 2 pit stop strategy, and none of the strategy were able to wear down the tires a lot to maximize the performance.